This episode of Brown Girl Guilt is sponsored by all my past lovers. Y'all done did mess me up, but that's okay, because I got a podcast episode and basically an entire month's worth of episodes out of it. Now, if I get rich and famous because y'all broke my heart, I think that was a pretty solid trade off. Hi, friends. It's your girl Harpo. Welcome to this episode of Brown Girl Guilt titled, It's Not Me, It's You. Now, I sat down to record this episode earlier and I couldn't do it because I was literally too senti. The idea for the episode actually came to me while I was driving in my car on the way back from a therapy session. So, yeah, I'm sure you can already imagine just how sad I must have been. And so I thought, okay, you know what? This is pretty intense. I'm feeling this in the moment. I'm going to take a step back and process why I want this to be the episode that it is. So, I was thinking really hard about the idea of self-worth when it comes to being rejected, being broken up with, being ghosted. I don't think we talk enough about how all of those things, being broken up with or being rejected, being ghosted, how all of that actually impacts your self-worth. And if you're someone that's really practicing self-love, it can be really daunting and it can be very damaging to that entire journey and that entire process of trying to really love yourself. And for me, I feel like I never really zoomed out and thought about how being broken up with, being rejected, being ghosted impacted my self worth so much. I never realized it affected me that much and actually drove how I felt about myself and how it really defined how I felt about myself. And I didn't have this realization until I was in a therapy session a few weeks ago. So, not the same therapy session that, made me think about doing this episode after, but a different one. So, I was expressing in a session to my therapist that, I feel like every time I get rejected or every time, a relationship or a situationship doesn't work out, or when I've been ghosted, um, that the dialogue in my head is actually a very harmful one. And it's great that I have awareness of it, right? Like I've gotten awareness that the dialogue in my head is a very harmful one, but um, I don't really know what to do to change it, And so I was telling her about, I can zoom out and I can understand that, sometimes people aren't meant to be together, right? Or you're not going to be everyone's cup of tea. Or it's just that, like, yeah, you're not meant to be with this person, or this person just maybe they didn't like you, and quite frankly, to go off the title of this episode, it's not you, it's them, it's not a you problem, it's a them problem. I can zoom out and I can understand all of that, and I can rationalize all of that. But deep down, there's a part of me, right? Like a 5-year-old Harpo, and then a 15-year-old Harpo, and then a 21-year-old Harpo, and now a 24-year-old Harpo that feels like she's just not good enough. And the basis of my self love, that foundation of the self love that I'm working on, is shaky because consistently I met with not feeling worthy enough. I feel like we don't talk about that enough. We don't talk about how someone not wanting you can damage your self-worth so much. I mean, yeah, we talk about how breakups are sad and how being rejected is, like it sucks, and I mean, I've been trivializing and making fun of the fact that I got ghosted recently. But really we don't talk about the impacts of it on our self-worth. And so in that therapy session, I said to my therapist that the dialogue in my head is such a nasty one, and I'm really frustrated by it. And so she had me, word vomit. She said, "Why don't you say out loud everything that your mind says to you? That voice in your head. Why don't you say it out loud to me here in this space? This is a safe space." And so I said, "Okay, I'm just going to say it all without judgment, and I'm just going to word vomit." And so I did. I said it all out loud. I said that, um, the voice in my head always says to me, "You're stupid. It was probably your fault. You're not good enough. You pushed them away. you were too much for them, you know, and that you're not lovable. You probably did something to screw it all up, just like you always do, because the fact that this happens so consistently and all the time means that you must be unlovable. You must be really that bad to be with. And I said a whole bunch of other stuff that, I feel like aren't really coming to me in this moment because I said it then and I released it. And I said to myself, this is not actually how we feel about ourselves. And we're not going to speak to ourselves like that anymore. But in the moment, I said some really harsh things. And when I was done, my therapist looked at me and she said, okay, I'm going to read these words back to you now. I wrote these down and I'm going to read it back to you. And I'm getting emotional. So if I cry, let me. And so she read it back out to me, and I was, a couple things happened to me in that scenario, in that moment. A couple things happened. First was when she said, "I'm emotional and I'm upset." I was confused. I was like, "The fuck? Like, why are you upset?" Right? And the second thing was that when she read those things back to me, I think that was the first time that I realized just how hurtful all those things actually are that my mind tells me. So if I think about the first thing, I was so stunned that the way that I speak to myself is so harmful that it makes another person upset and it makes them emotional. But this is the dialogue that I hear in my mind every single day, and it doesn't nearly elicit a similar reaction. So the fact that I'm not as upset about how I speak to myself as somebody else is jarring to me. I cannot believe it. And so I'm upset at myself that I let myself talk like this to myself, but I've never thought it was a problem. And then the second step is, wow, I cannot believe those are the things I say to me. It's not until you tell somebody else and they read it back to you and then you realize, damn, I'm mean to myself. And then when you hear it from somebody else, you realize, oh my God, no, none of that's true. I'm not stupid. It was just a them thing. They just weren't into it. It doesn't make me less than and anything like that. But I think the when I zoom out and I think about how, like, where are those things coming from, right? Like, how am I allowing somebody else's rejection and somebody's else's non-acceptance of me permeate my mind to such a deep level that this is the chatter and this is the dialogue that exists in my head all the time, and I'm not even aware of it, right? I'm not aware of it. I don't find a problem with it. If I was to speak that way to somebody else, first of all, I could never speak to somebody else the way that I speak to myself because it's just not nice. It's just not okay. But the fact that I have allowed the rejection of myself by somebody else impact me that much is absolutely wild to me. And I think that's where I'm at right now, that being rejected, being broken up with, being ghosted, not being given communication, right? Being disrespected, being hurt, being dishonored, how all of that can find its way into how you see yourself and how you define yourself is absolutely wild to me. And I think, this is something that I have really actively wanted to make a part of my practice when it comes to dating. If I'm not interested in you, or if you're not serving me, or if you're different than what I thought you were going to be, and perhaps we're just not on the same wavelength, I think I want to name those things. I want to be able to say that it's just not resonating for me, or that I want something different. I want to be able to voice those things and say those things because I never want someone to feel like they weren't good enough for me, because the truth is I'm probably not good enough for me right now, and I need to go deal with that first before anybody else can become good enough for me. And so, my mom always says that you see the world and you see people in that world as you are yourself. And because I think that's the commitment that I've made to myself to not do that to somebody else, I think everyone else is going to do the same for me too. That I'm going to be given reasons for why they don't want to be with me, or I'm going to be given, at the very least, communication for, I'm not ready for this, or I don't want this. But that's not the case, right? We can't expect that from people all the time. But I think what I'm really trying to do is, when somebody doesn't want to be with me, it shouldn't make me not want to be with me, if that makes sense, right? Just because somebody else does not want to be with me does not mean that I'm not inherently deserving of love or respect or care or, understanding and compassion. I can still have all of those things. And it's okay for me to not be everybody's cup of tea, but it doesn't make me any less stronger of a cup of tea. It shouldn't impact my self worth and how much I love myself if somebody else cannot love me. And I don't say that with ego, right? It's not like, oh, fuck that person. They can't see me, whatever. I'm going to do me. I'm good. No, I think even that is a cover up. But just detaching and stepping away and not making it about you, right? Like really understanding it's not me, it's you. Understanding that, I mean, it's fine again, right? Rejection can happen, breakups do happen, but if someone is treating you in that way and, the fantasy or the story that you told yourself in your head about this relationship, if that doesn't become the actual reality of it, just leaving it at that. Just leaving it at the fact that, okay, I had imagined something else, but something else is happening. I'm just going to try and accept it for what it is and not hold on to this narrative that I've told in my head, and leaving it at that, not making it about, I'm not good enough. I fucked up. I messed up. I'm stupid. I probably pushed them away. I don't want that to be my initial reaction anymore. I don't want that to be the initial dialogue that I have in my head anymore. I want to be able to just say, okay, thank you. That is all. Your purpose has been served. You came here to show me something, teach me something, have me experience something, and that's it. The time has ended now. It does not mean that I am less than. And this is a practice, right? This is self-love is called a practice. I think I said this in earlier episodes, and maybe if I haven't said it in an earlier episode yet, maybe I'll say it in the next one. That self-love is a practice. It's not a destination. And so even, really taking a microscope and looking at, how do I define myself? How do I, define my worth? How do I set up my worth? How do I view my worth? And I think it can't be so shaky that it gets uprooted by the comments of somebody else, or like the treatment of somebody else, or the decisions of somebody else. So I think my commitment to myself, when it comes to showing up in more, and this is more so for romantic relationships that I'm talking in reference to, but any relationship really, is not letting my definition of me be defined by anybody else. I was in a meditation circle by someone I admire a lot, Dora Kamau. And, we were exploring this question of how much of my view of me is actually constructed by me, and how much of how I see myself is actually defined by other people. I think when we start to pose that question to ourselves and say, okay, so how much of me and how I feel about me and what I think about me is actually defined by me? I think we'll be really surprised to find out that a lot of what we actually think about ourselves is stuff we picked up along the way, stuff we inherited from other people, whether that was in childhood, while we were teenagers, and just journeying through, right? As Manvinder would say, something that we picked up on our travels. And I think that we have to start getting back to who we are based on who we think we are. You know, how do I define myself? How do I see myself? If I think that I am none of the above, then that's probably true. If I don't truly think at my core I am not deserving of love, if I think truly at my core I am deserving of love, care, respect, attention, compassion, kindness, and that it's okay if this person doesn't want me, I think we have to really start to believe that for ourselves. We have to start defining ourselves for ourselves, right? Harpo gets to be who Harpo wants to be, not who everybody else is making Harpo to be. Anyway, that was a very roundabout way of me saying, love your damn self, okay? That's it. Just because somebody don't want you doesn't mean that you are unlovable. I think we have to really just be gone with the idea that we're not deserving of love. Every single one of us is deserving of love, even on our worst days, because even on our worst days, we're acting out of a place that is misaligned with who we are. When we're truly in alignment with our authentic selves, we do not do things that do not make us not deserving of love. I think we're always deserving of love. And you are deserving of my love. Only if you like, comment, subscribe. No, I'm kidding. You're deserving of love regardless. Thanks for listening to this. It means a lot to me.